It's the I Can't Mom Today podcast with Heather, the new mom, and Vera, the seasoned mom. I Can't Mom Today.
Hey, this is Vera and Heather back again with another episode of I Can't Mom Today podcast. Hi, Vera.
Hey, Heather.
How are you?
I'm okay. I think I'm a little better off than you are.
Yeah, we have, I have one blessed child here because his daycare had a COVID case. So they are closed for the next week.
Oh,
and
gosh.
Of course, life does not stop because of that.
No. So if Baker makes an appearance, then we all understand, us moms.
Yeah.
Totally get it. So this is part of the world we live in today.
It is. So just glad that, I'm here. We're healthy. That's what matters to me.
Yes. Oh, for sure. That's absolutely the ultimate, most important thing.
Yeah. And we have a very special guest today.
We do. Speaking of moms being at home with their children more than they have in the past, we have Ainsley Arment, who is the founder of Wild and Free. And I also have one of her books as well. But Ainsley, hey.
Hey,
Hi.
Vera and Heather. Super honored to chat with you today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you for
really
coming.
appreciate you being here. And I'm hoping that you can help, of course, moms who maybe have been homeschooling before the whole COVID thing happened, but also for the moms who were taken by surprise by this whole thing, because I know in California, nobody's going to school. So all the kids are home. And some places like where I am in Florida, you have a choice, but about half of the parents basically, I think generally are keeping their kids at home. And so it's a new world, but I want you to tell us about Wild and Free, because this has been, you've been around doing this for a while before COVID even.
Yeah. So these are crazy, crazy times that we are living in. And I think we're all just trying to find I think some people are using the term finding normalcy, but I think we're all just trying to find some kind of anchor to keep us going and something to keep us connected, and our kids to have some kind of consistency is what we're really looking for. I founded Wild and Free about 6 years ago. I have 5 kids and started homeschooling them. I guess would be the more well-known term, but we use our own terms for it. But 11 years ago, I pulled my son, my oldest was in 2nd grade. I pulled him out of school and was just going to take a year to help him rediscover what lights him up and give him a little bit more chance at having a childhood with more time and space to explore. So we just took it year by year, but here we are 11 years in. And I kind of describe our philosophy as wild and free because I wanted to free my kids to learn and grow at their own pace, but also to find their passions and to, and that's a relative term, but as they get older, they deepen, but really exploring different passions and ideas, to have time to play, spend time outside, and to reclaim a little bit of that wonder and magic of my childhood, where we had a little bit more freedom to be outdoors and to spend time in our imaginations and play. And I feel like so much of who we are, we became in those in-between moments of childhood. So wanting to give that to my kids, I became an unlikely homeschooler. And Wild and Free is meant to represent the kids, but also the mamas and the parents who just want to do things a little differently. And just to get outside the box if that's what their family culture is calling for. So that freedom to kind of, for the kids, but also for the parents to kind of look at what their family culture needs to be, but also what it can be if they step outside the box a little bit. So that's a little bit about the history of Wild and Free. And it's been a community for 6 years that started on Instagram that is made up of so many different kinds of moms and family units and parents, parents who both work, parents who their kids are in traditional school, but they just adapt the philosophy of Wild and Free to their lives. And and then parents who hybrid homeschool, maybe do co-ops or half and half, and then parents who are full-time homeschoolers and maybe look a little bit more like the traditional homeschool you imagine. So it's really made up of so many different kinds. We have teachers, full-time teachers that are part of Wild and Free, that use the resources to encourage their classroom teaching and things like that. So
that's cool. And then how old are your kids?
My kids are 16, 14, 11, 7, and 5.
Good Lord. You're such a better mother, some better person, better woman than I am. I don't know how you do it, much less having them all at home. That's got to be intense.
Definitely.
It definitely, it's something we grew into because I didn't start out having 5 at home. So
yeah.
when I had, it's kind of like when you have another kid, everyone would ask like, when are you going to have another kid? And you're like, honey, I am just trying to get through this one kid. Please do not ask me about any more kids. And so we have always had the philosophy. We were never like, oh, we're going to have a big family, 5 kids. No, it was one kid at a time. And so just doing what we could in each season. And in fact, after 3 boys, we were DONE done. So somehow we added 2 girls to the mix, but we did. And I started homeschooling when I had a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 18-month-old. So it was very different. It looked different. And those days we spent a lot of time outside. I was able to still work from home a little bit, but mostly just wanted to be a stay-at-home mom at that point, to do this thing for this year. And it was kind of something that just lit us all on fire. And we never looked like a traditional homeschool family. And I had trouble connecting with other homeschool moms. And that's how Wild and Free kind of came about, was just online, started seeing other people that were connecting with the things that I was sharing. And I found kindred spirits were out there and that I wasn't alone. And so we started hosting gatherings, which led to local groups being formed all over the country and now the world. And it just started really just from something that was missing from my life. And then a philosophy that I wanted my kids to have a childhood, not to keep them children, not to not childlike versus childish. Like I wanted them to grow and mature, but keep that childlike wonder. And really, kids need a childhood, not to prepare them for the next stage, knowing that childhood will prepare them if they're allowed to experience that age-appropriate developmental time. And it looks different than giving your infant flashcards and putting, it's very, very different. Their brains are capable of learning so much, but we're not necessarily giving them the tools they need to learn to fully develop and to make the most of that. So,
well, that's what I'm wondering is, like you've mentioned, like the traditional homeschool, what, everybody kind of thinks of in their head. What's the difference? Like, what can you think of something specifically that you guys do that's different than your quote unquote traditional homeschool routine?
Sure. I think what I was seeing is that everyone was trying to replicate. When I say to replicate the classroom, I don't mean they, necessarily had, a classroom, but a lot of people do have a classroom in their home that homeschool traditionally. And some people love it just because they enjoy the aesthetic and all of that. But it wasn't, I just saw that we weren't in it to replicate the classroom where we had school hours from 8 to 3 every day. I took my kid out of that for a reason. And so I found one of the big differences was not being able to connect. Like if I wanted to get together and see if some other people who homeschooled wanted to meet at a local park or go for a hike or hang out at the bay and do some nature journaling or whatever that looked like, or just to play and swing on the rope swings. They weren't available because they had to do quote unquote school, all day, every day. And I thought I was different because I brought my son home to take him out of that environment. Not that I didn't want him to learn and that we didn't explore science books and do math and read books and learn to write our letters and all of that. We did, but it doesn't take up a whole day. And so I wanted to live life with my kids and give them the world as their classroom. And I didn't see that happening in my immediate area or local groups. They wanted to still do all the classes, fill their kids' heads full of information, help them memorize. And I just didn't understand why they were doing that from home when there's somebody there's other places that can do that. And what I wanted to give them was something they couldn't get in a traditional setting.
I love that. Well, I'm also, I mean, I again, the idea of homeschooling is really daunting to me. And I have one son, he's 17 now. And he's been able to go to brick and mortar school, as we've been calling it. But when he was littler, I remember, and my family was always kind of like this too. Like, if you don't feel like going to school today, you need even if you're 6 or 7 and you just need a break, I would always say, well, if you want to stay home, you're tired, sleep in, we'll relax and, we'll have a pajama day. And, traditionally, a lot of people would frown upon that. And I spoke to a child psychologist at one point, and she said, yeah, I think it's actually very sad, because I was complaining about how the school always wanted some form of a note, and they really wanted a doctor's note. Like, I couldn't even just write a note saying my kid had a sore throat. I didn't want to send him in. She said, yeah, I think that's actually very sad that you can't let your child stay home and go get ice cream and sit in your pajamas all day and just relax for a day, And so I really like what you're saying, because I think that we push our kids so much, and life is so intense. It's like you said, 8 to 3, blah, 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 trudge on through. But I think that the good part, maybe one of the positive things, is with this whole, with the whole pandemic, that people are learning to do things at home and kind of loosen up and realize that structure isn't completely necessary.
Let me interject here.
Yeah. Okay.
So as a previous teacher, I understand, and I think that it's great to provide your kids with that opportunity. However, the reality is that when a child misses school, it now puts more of a load on that teacher to pull them up to where the rest of the class has the learning, and there's already so much going on in the classroom that they're having to deal with different levels, and assisting some kids more than others, and providing more challenging things for that. So there's a lot going in the classroom. So when you're giving your child that time away, unless they are able to pick it up on their own, it does make it really difficult for the teacher. Not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just letting you know what the reality is. And there's so much more to the classroom environment than what people understand. Like, people are like, so you give them a workbook, whatever. And it's not true. There is so much pressure on the school and the school district fighting for funds based on test scores. And I hated it as a teacher. I hated tests. I hated standardized tests. I thought it was the most ridiculous thing, because a test doesn't tell me anything except for how you are at applying the knowledge to test taking.
Yeah.
And so they truly couldn't tell me. And I always told my kids, I was like, this isn't telling me who you are. This is just telling me what you know on this test and in a test format, and not necessarily what you know. So that being said, I think that kids should have some more freedoms. I think that they should have some availability, but class sizes need to be drastically smaller.
So true. I can see that. I mean, it was, even when my son was in school, I mean, I would talk with the teachers. I was always like a room mom that was in there as much as possible to be there. And my kid had a lot of food allergies too. So it felt like it was helpful for me to be there kind of assisting with parties and stuff like that. But as I got to know the teachers, they would say the same thing. I mean, there was in his kindergarten class, there was one little girl that just couldn't get reading under her hat, and so she was going to have to be held back. And the teacher was devastated, because she said, it's not fair to hold a child back, because if she's not developmentally ready, it's not like, everybody learns at a different pace. But because there is standardization, it would be unfair to her to advance her without that ability. It would be unfair to the future teachers and just the whole class, because you do have to think about the class mentality of there's, and until we can get to smaller classrooms, there are some things that we just, the traditional school classroom setting teachers just have to deal with. And there's standardization for a reason, because it helps teachers kind of have, an ability to get the kids to the next level and know that they're going to be okay with information. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know how to find that freedom in the classroom. And you would know more with your experience in teaching. And that was probably a constant struggle, I'm sure.
Yeah. We don't, in America, we don't value education how we should, because from my experience, and I experienced the opposite, where kids should have been held back and they weren't, because it was defeating to their self-esteem to hold them back. And so, I mean, and I had fourth graders that didn't know how to read because they were just kept being pushed on. And then they wound up in special education. And that's, if that's not defeating to a child, especially when they have the ability, but they haven't been given the resources throughout their educational environment. So I think that just we don't, like, from a governmental standpoint, we don't value it like it should be valued, like taking art and PE and everything else away music, from kids. Yeah. I mean, these are outlets, and these are creative outlets that they need. And, it goes to support that you don't need to be in a classroom all the time to learn. Like, there are other ways to learn than sitting in a classroom. You can see geometry in the world around you. You can see math, you can see science, you can see reading. So, I think I think your way of looking at homeschooling, because I've always heard of, here's the packets and we're going to be doing this and we're going to just get through our lessons and then we can go with our day, as opposed to embedding the lessons in the day.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a time and different seasons for different kinds of leaning into learning. And sometimes your kids aren't super inspired by the world around them. And that might be a good time to open up some books and help them, even a workbook or whatever. Those are all great tools. But they're just tools. They're one of many tools that we have in our arsenal of resources. And so we can try different things in different seasons. And then when they find something that they're super excited about, we can go down that rabbit trail and divert a little bit. But you're right. I love that the idea of seeing math and numbers and geometry in nature and in the world, because I think especially in America, kids are kind of, taught to think that, some kids are math people and some kids aren't, but really we're all math creatures. Like, numbers are actually more natural than letters and counting, and kids do that. My kids always in their younger years picked up on counting quicker than letters, because you don't see the alphabet out in nature. You see numbers and counting. And I read some research recently that was talking about some of the Asian countries and how none of those kids grew up thinking they're not math oriented, and they are notoriously known for being better in math. And they were saying statistically that supports that idea. And that part of the reason is because they're taught from a young age that they are good at math. And it's a part of their culture. And I thought that was so interesting. And we really do get the chance in our families, no matter how we school them, to decide what is important and what values we can start instilling in them when they're young, and getting them excited about math and numbers and tessellations and turtle shells and all sorts of things.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned books. I mean, you have a book called Wild and Free Holidays, right? With family activities. And it kind of, when I looked at it, it reminded me, and I'm totally aging myself. And I mean, you guys might not remember the TV show Zoom. I know I'm old.
We're on Zoom.
Well, it was called you're so funny. It was
you remember it.
Yeah. And they used to have activities, and we actually had a book. It was called The Big Book of Zoom, and it had all these little fun activities. We loved that book. I mean, I think it got so torn up because it had all kinds of fun stuff in it. And that's what your book reminds me of, all these fun little things that you can do together. And I also really like the fact that you have them marked from like beginner, intermediate, and advanced, because I'm not particularly crafty. So some of these I was like, oh my God, wait a minute, that's an advanced one. I could probably do the beginner one of this, you know? So it's not nearly as intimidating if you're not quite the crafty person. But I just love some of these things, like, you know, you have in here for the fall, like little pumpkin beeswax candles that you can make, which I thought were really cool. Just, you know, like you were saying, going along with the seasons. And it kind of gets you in the mood.
Yeah, I think I love the holiday season, not just because of the holidays, but simply because it feels like a cozy time of year to lean into some more, you know, in the summer, in the warm weather. We're always out this year was a little different, but the winter kind of brings us together again. You know, we're having more intentional family meals at dinner time, and it's dark at night. So we usually pick up a book, whether it's a Harry Potter series or Lord of the Rings or something, where we read together aloud for like 20 minutes as a family. And then these crafts in the holidays book. So I'm really excited about the holidays collection, because it's something that, especially when we are missing a lot of activities in our life, it's something that we can pull out and do together a little bit more mindfully than just sending everybody off to, you know, their devices or whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
And it can maybe it's just 30 minutes a day and they still do their other things on their own, but it's something that can connect everybody, connect siblings, parents, and kids. And it starts in the autumn and it goes through Valentine's Day. So there's thankful trees and little pumpkin houses that tutorials for making miniature pumpkin houses.
They're really cute. Like, yeah.
The pumpkin beeswax candles. And then it goes into, you know, Mother Earth wool felting and midwinter lanterns. I love all the lanterns.
Oh yeah, those are really cool too. Yeah. So do you have a suggestion, since Heather has her 3-year-old home with her for the week?
Yeah, I was just trying to navigate his iPad real quick.
Oh,
I know. Well, that's the great challenge, is like, what do we do if we can't? I mean, what did we do before we could hand them an iPad for a Zoom call? I mean, it's crazy. But it is, it's hard. I think there's, you know, obviously there's some more intentional media that we could put on for our kids, whether it's, you know, Planet Earth or an audiobook. My kids have learned that even if I say no to media, they'll ask for an audiobook, and I'll usually say yes, because it's something that they feel like they've got one by me. But really, I'm on to them. I'm like, well, okay, all right. Okay, I guess you can listen to an audio.
I guess so. I love that.
Or even finding like an old cassette player with random books on tape and giving, you know, where they can really control it and it's hands-on and manual, is kind of fun sometimes for the really little ones. In that age group. But finding, you know, getting outside, even if they're spending time on iPads, getting outside for 20, 30 minutes a day or throughout the day is so beneficial to regrounding them physically and mentally. And it does wonders and boosts their brains. So it's really good. And then encouraging them to bring nature inside. Maybe they'll play with acorns and sort the different kinds of things they find for the next 30 minutes. And one thing sometimes leads to the next, which is the beauty of that. But obviously we're all trying to get through and find meaningful activities for our kids right now. So the 3-year-old age is tough, because left to their own devices, who knows? And, you know, the worst sound in the world when you have a 3-year-old is silence.
Yep. I remember I would say, like, Lucas, I wouldn't hear anything. And I'd say, what are you doing? You know, from around the corner or whatever. And he'd say nothing. And of course he was doing something slightly mischievous. And he'd say, how come you know that, Mommy? How do you know? And I'd say, because I have eyes in the back of my head. And one day we were sitting on the couch and he's like playing with my hair. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he says, I'm looking for the eyes in the back of your head.
He's looking for those magical mama eyes.
Exactly. I said, well, they don't come out all the time. They hide. They have like little flaps that hide them.
Exactly.
And hair.
They're magic eyes.
That's all right.
So funny. I know. One time I was looking for my 2-year-old, and he's 11 now, but at the time he was 2, and I found him with a screwdriver, and he had unscrewed all the plates on the outlet covers.
Oh my gosh.
Which obviously I was equal parts impressed and panicked to the core that he had a screwdriver near an outlet. But somehow he was alive and had managed to take them all off. And that was his favorite thing to do, was screw those on and off over and over. So,
oh my gosh.
Terrifying.
I know. Well, maybe he'll be I don't know, cabinet maker, carpenter. That's it. I was looking for that.
He still loves to take things apart and put them back. He just built a go-kart. So,
oh, really?
Nice.
Yeah, he loves to put things together with help. But yes, if he's not working on something like that, he's lost. So
that's really
bored
cool.
out of his mind, apparently. So,
well, and Ainsley, you also have a podcast too, right?
Yeah, it's the Wild and Free podcast, and it's Wild plus free. So when people are searching for it, you have to use that plus sign.
Okay.
And yeah, it's I think it's in a few different places. I know it's on iTunes and Stitcher and SoundCloud.com/Be Wild and Free. And we just usually talk with moms in our community or other people that have gone before us and homeschooled and raised kids to actually be successful and not stay at home. So they are very encouraging to me and to the other moms in the community. But we share a lot of the ideas of crafts and different things that everybody brings something unique to their homeschool, and it's because of who they are. So I love that about Wild and Free, is that these moms are also unique. Some of them are working and some of them are staying at home, but they all bring something unique to their homeschool because of their own gifts. And I think that's a really great part that we can offer our kids too, or the things that we bring. And rather than looking around at everyone else and the amazing things they're doing that we can't do, but looking at what we have and the things that we can do. And that's a gift to our family. And so we just try to chat with different moms in the community.
I love that. Well, and Heather and I often talk about how it's not a one size fits all momming, parenting in general. You know, the parents are different, the kids are different. You know, you could have, well, you have 5 kids, and I'm sure you'd say each one of them is totally different from the other, even though they, you know, are in the same family.
So different. Yes, I know. So different.
So you got to be a little bit flexible, and yeah, there are tips and things, but one thing that works for somebody else's kid might not work for yours for one reason or another.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can learn and hear stories from others. And sometimes they are great ideas for our own kids. And they're like, yes, I'm going to try that. That's going to work. But other times it's just very unique, and we have to find what works for us. So that's the beautiful thing about being in community with other moms, is that we can learn from each other and our differences, but also be different. And that's okay too. We don't all have to do it the same way.
Yeah, well, and feeling like you're not alone. That's always so crucial, I think, because being a mom sometimes can be lonely. So knowing that there are other moms out there, you know, going through whatever, struggling again with the pandemic and everything, that they're not alone. And that's always good to know.
Definitely.
So true. Yeah. We say that all the time, that might not do this the same way, but we're in it together, and you're not alone.
Yay. Well, Heather, any other questions on how you can corral Baker?
No, do you want to come take him now, or should do I need to fly him somewhere? What needs to be done? I'm sure he's willing to be a 6th.
There you go. We'll just throw him in a FedEx box. He'll be good to go.
So pop some holes in there.
Well, thank you so much, Ainsley, for being on the show with us today. And again, so tell us what your website is, where people can find you if they want to reach out.
Sure. My website's bewildandfree.org, and you can find everything about our community if you want to learn more about the community, resources, and even the books published through Harper One. There's a link to the books as well. So that's a great hub. Of course, the books are all on Amazon and other booksellers as well. And then our Instagram account is wildandfree.co. And it's just a fun community where we share a lot of what's going on in other people's lives and homes, and try to share a little encouragement for motherhood and learning at home.
That's awesome.
Nice. I have subscribed to your podcast already. I'm on social media.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And it was really such a pleasure to chat with you both, and appreciate
You
it.
too. Oh, I have my wild woman quote of the week, and I think fits today. It's only dead fish swim with the stream all the time. You know,
That's a good one.
and that was Linda Ellerby. You remember her? She had that show, Nick News.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Again, I'm aging myself, but
Man, you guys.
Well, sorry.
Maybe it's a northern
I
thing.
know.
maybe.
I don't know. We'll go with northern and not old, okay?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot better. So, and if anybody wants to find us or email us, iCan'tMomTodayPodcast@gmail. And then, of course, iCan'tMomTodayPodcast on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, even though I haven't mastered TikTok yet. So,
When you do, let me know.
Let's
all right, cool.
Let's figure out a dance, like an old
Check
lady
it out.
dance.
I know I can't even do the floss. I'm like I'm at a loss with the floss.
We'll bring back the Roger Rabbit.
There you go. I'm all about
There
that.
you go.
All right. Until next time, thank you so much.